Well, Israel and Turkey have spent months turning Syria into a geopolitical chessboard. But now, that rivalry has moved dangerously close to the battlefield. Well, an Israeli strike on Syria's Abu al-Duhur airbase has triggered a furious Turkish response, while Israel has openly warned Ankara against expanding its military footprint inside Syria. And the most worrying part? Washington says this episode could have spiraled into a direct military confrontation between Israel and Turkey. So why did Israel bomb a Syrian military base? Was Tel Aviv really responding to an imminent Turkish troop deployment? Why has Ankara emerged as such a powerful player in post-Assad Syria? And why does Israel see Turkey's growing presence as a potential security threat? Well, in this edition of From the News Desk, we will break down how Syria's military buildup, Turkey's expanding influence, and most importantly, Israel's security calculations have brought the two regional powers closer to a possible confrontation. And stay with us till the end, because we'll also tell you what the Trump administration is doing to prevent an Israel-Turkey clash from turning into a much bigger regional crisis. According to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office, Israel and Syria had agreed to maintain a security status quo, and Damascus was allegedly on the verge of violating that agreement by permitting Turkish troops to deploy at the base near Aleppo. In fact, Israel also said it had repeatedly warned Syria that such a Turkish deployment would threaten Israeli security. Netanyahu subsequently made the message even more explicit. He categorically said Israel would not tolerate a Turkish military entrenchment in Syria that threatens Israel, adding that Israel had made its warning clear through military action. Well, this is a very crucial point. Israel was not simply striking a Syrian airbase, it was sending a message to Damascus and, more importantly, to Ankara. And the message? Israel does not want another powerful military actor establishing itself deeper inside Syria, particularly one with which Israel already has increasingly bitter relations. And this explains why Abu al-Duhur strike has suddenly become much bigger than just a single strike. Now, the fundamental problem is that Israel and Turkey have very different visions of post-Assad Syria. After Bashar al-Assad's fall, Turkey emerged as one of the principal supporters of Syria's new leadership under President Ahmed al-Shara. Ankara has backed Syria politically, provided military support, and helped train and rebuild the Syrian armed forces. On the flip side, Israel remains deeply suspicious of the new Syrian government and has repeatedly acted militarily to prevent hostile forces or even military capabilities from establishing themselves close to its border. Well, that creates a strategic collision. Turkey wants a stronger, more capable Syrian state, and Israel wants a Syrian security environment that cannot threaten Israel. And when Turkey begins helping rebuilding Syrian military infrastructure, the two visions become increasingly difficult to actually reconcile. And the Abu al-Duhur episode illustrates the problem perfectly here. Israeli concerns reportedly focused on Turkish military involvement at this very base, while Ankara rejected Tel Aviv's allegation as untenable and accused Israel of using them to justify attacks on Syrian sovereignty. Now, Turkey has also accused Netanyahu's government of pursuing destabilizing and expansionist policies. So the confrontation is no longer merely ideological or diplomatic. It is actually geographical. Turkey and Israel are both operating in the same Syrian theater, and whenever one side expands its footprint, the other side has to calculate whether that expansion could alter the regional balance. And that is precisely where the danger lies. So why did Abu al-Duhur become so important? Well, because Syria is attempting to rebuild its military capabilities after years of civil war, and Turkey is playing a major role in that process. From Israeli perspective, this strike was aimed at preventing circumstances in which Turkish forces could move closer to Israel's area of operation and create the possibility of a direct confrontation. But Israeli concerns go beyond just individual Turkish soldiers. The larger issue is infrastructure. A military base can become a platform for radar systems, air defense capabilities, trainings, logistics, and potentially combat aircrafts or even drones. And once such infrastructure is established, removing it becomes considerably more difficult. Well, that is why Israel may have preferred to act before any alleged Turkish military entrenchment became irreversible. But mind you, the same action could actually make a clash between two sides more likely, because Turkey sees Israeli strikes as attacks on Syrian sovereignty and as an attempt to dictate who can operate inside Syria. Israel sees Turkish military expansion as a potential strategic threat, and Syria finds itself caught between two increasingly powerful regional players. There is also an important detail that highlights how quickly this situation can actually escalate. Well, Reuters reported that the heads of Israel's Mossad spoke with Syria's foreign minister on August 14th about Turkey's military presence, just days before the Israeli strike. Well, this meeting suggests the issue was being discussed at the highest level before the bombs fell. And this is where the United States enters the picture. Washington is clearly worried that Israel and Turkey could stumble into a direct military clash. Tom Barrack, the US ambassador to Turkey and Trump's administration's special envoy for Syria, said the Israeli strike carried a real risk of rapid escalation into a direct military confrontation between Israel and Turkey as well as Syria. Why? Simply because Turkey was reportedly not warned about the Israeli operation. In fact, Barrack also explained that Turkish forces saw Israeli aircraft moving towards the area but did not know the specific target or objective. That created the possibility that Turkey could have intercepted the aircraft movement as a threat to its own forces and scramble its fighter. In simpler words, a misunderstanding could have produced an entirely different outcome. An Israeli aircraft approaches, Turkish forces detect it, Turkey assumes its troops or assets are being targeted, Turkish fighters could have responded, Israel responds to the Turkish response, and suddenly two US partners are engaged militarily in Syria. Barrack also mentioned that Washington was therefore working to establish a formal deconciliation mechanism involving Israel, Turkey, and Syria, essentially to create a communications channel designed to prevent misunderstandings and accidental military confrontations. So now to answer the most burning question, are Israel and Turkey heading for a war? Well, the conditions for an accidental confrontation are becoming more serious, and the most dangerous factor is proximity. Turkey is increasing its involvement in Syria, Israel is maintaining military activities inside Syria, and Syria is rebuilding its armed forces, and all three actors have competing security interests. And at the same time, rhetoric between Ankara and Tel Aviv is becoming increasingly hostile. Well, Turkey rejects Israel's justification for the al-Duhur strike, while Israel insists that Turkish military entrenchment in Syria will not be tolerated. Well, that means the next flashpoint could emerge from something as simple as a military exercise, a radar installation, a drone operation, or an unexpected movement of troops. Now, the United States understands the danger. That is why Barrack is pushing for a trilateral deconciliation mechanism and warning about the possibility of rapid escalation. Well, for now, diplomacy appears to have prevented the al-Duhur strikes from becoming something far more bigger and dangerous, but the underlying dispute has not disappeared. Well, Turkey wants influence over Syria's reconstruction and security architecture. Israel wants to prevent hostile or potentially hostile military forces from establishing themselves near its border. And Syria wants to rebuild its sovereignty and military institution after years of war. Well, all these three objectives are increasingly incompatible. The al-Duhur strike, therefore, may not be beginning of an Israel-Turkey war, but it is definitely a big warning. Well, with that, it's a wrap on today's edition of From the News Desk. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm Yash Goyal signing off for Times Now Digital. Until next time, take care and keep watching this space for more such videos.